Now, what is going on, everyone? Today we are going to take a look at Objection.js, which is a SQL-friendly ORM for Node. And yeah, we are going to explore this library, and I can tell you it's pretty cool. So Objection.js itself is built on top of knex.js, which is a SQL query builder, so a pretty popular project actually. And in this tutorial, we're going to talk about how to do migrations. We're going to talk about how to have seed data, so example data in your database. And we're going to talk about how to build like a REST API with Express that accesses your database with Postgres. So we're going to do all of that. And before we get started, I just want to show you what we will build. So since we are on YouTube, I thought it makes sense to make an example that relates to YouTube. So let's say we have users, and each user can have like maximum one channel. So either you have 0 channels or you have 1 channel. Okay. I think this is also how it is on YouTube. You cannot have multiple channels. You need like multiple users for this. Okay. So even if someone has 2 channels, he created like 2 users. Okay. So this is like how the setup is, and each channel can contain an arbitrary amount of videos. So in that case, I just drew 4 of them here. So to sum this up, we're going to have 3 tables: a user table, a channel table, and a video table. And a user can have like an association or with channel. So you can have either 0 channels or 1 channel. And every channel belongs to exactly 1 user. So this is like the other way around. Okay. And with channels, one channel can have an arbitrary amount of videos. That's why I wrote here n. And every video belongs to exactly 1 channel. Yeah, so if you know like entity relationship like models, these or the annotations I did are kind of done with this in mind. Okay, so I just want to show you what we want to build out, so it's a little bit easier to understand as we are actually doing it. Cool. So I would say let's just go to your directory where you want to build or where you want to create this project. I'm just going to make a directory and I'm going to call it Objection tutorial. And then I'm going to change inside of this directory, and I'm going to run npm init-yes, which is going to create a package.json file. And maybe we can already install a couple of things. So if you click on this Get Started button, you immediately it brings you to the installation page, and you can see that you will need Objection, like the library itself, then Nex, because like this thing, because Objection is using this under the hood, and a database driver, which is in our case Postgres. Yeah, so these are the things that we will need, and we will also need Express probably. So I'm just going to install Express. I'm going to install Objection. I'm going to install Nex, and I'm going to install the Postgres driver. Oops, do something wrong here. Oh, I forgot the npm install. Okay, I like this. Cool. And while this installs, I can show you, or you should have Postgres up and running locally. So I have it running at the moment here on my machine. So I created this database here, Objection tutorial. And by the way, if you're wondering what this thing is, it's pgadmin. It's like a UI for managing your Postgres database. You can also use the command line with PSQL for it, but I thought it's just a little bit easier if I use like the UI. So if you want to create a new database, you can just right click here and then click on create and then database, and you can give it whatever name you want. So in my case, I picked Objection tutorial, and since it already exists, I'm not going to create it again. And if I scroll down here to schemas and public and then to tables, you can see that I don't have any tables in here. So this database is completely empty. And yeah, that is good. And by the way, I will include the code or a link to the repo in the description down below. And in the README, you will also find instructions on how to set all of this up. Okay. Yeah, so let's go back to our little installation over here. Okay, this is done. Then what else do we need? We need but this time as the dev dependency node1, simply because I don't want to start and stop the server all the time. So this package is so incredibly useful. Yeah. Okay, so we will install node1, and finally we can open this thing up inside of our editor. So I'm just going to say code. And while this thing opens, I can actually already create the index.js file. Okay, so here it is. Nice. So empty index.js file. And in our package.json, we have everything we need: express, next, objection, and our Postgres drive. Okay, that's good. The first thing I will do is I'm going to make a dev script, and I'm going to say node1 index.js. So this is going to be our hot reload kind of thing. So this is just good because it's much easier for development. Cool. So let's start with setting up our database, shall we? And to do this, let's create a folder for it, right? Okay, so I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call it DB for database. And inside of this folder, I'm going to create 2 more folders. I'm going to create migrations and seeds. Yeah, just that we have it. Okay, here. So here you can see it. And if you have seen my previous tutorial about Next.js, then maybe you remember that this query builder here, it pulls its configuration from something called a knexfile, which is basically just a file that exports a object that contains the configuration for your database. And this is what we want to create next, I would say. Okay, so maybe let's get out of this and let's create this next file. And by the way, if you're wondering how to do this, just search in the documentation for next file. And here they have like a pretty nice navigation. So you can click here, and here you can see what a next file is and how you actually create it. So this is quite cool. And the way you can create one is you can just say npx, like npx, not npm, next init. And the reason is I don't have next installed globally. If you do, then npm will also work. But since I don't have it installed globally, I always need to run npx. Okay, so I'm just going to hit enter. And we end up like with this knexfile.js. And there we have it. So as you can see, it creates configurations for development, staging, and for production. Now, these days, you don't really need like these separate configs in here because you pull everything in with environment variables or Kubernetes anyway. But yeah, so I'm just going to delete the SQLite local file because I don't want it. It doesn't make sense, right? Why would I try to develop like with SQLite and then in production run on Postgres? That doesn't make sense. Like I want to run in production on the exact same database that I ran locally. Otherwise, I'm not confident that it works, right? Test like you fly and fly like you test kind of thing. Cool. So I already have this database. So in case your database is, or you create a different database, then you will need the appropriate name. And this is the username for Postgres, and then you also need the password. So per default, the password is just empty password. That's why we can just pass null. And the user is your system user. At least that's what happens if you install it locally. And if you don't know what your system username is, you can just run who am I. And then you can see here, okay, this is like my system user, and this is what I put here. So that will do overall. And yeah, that's it pretty much, I would say. What else? I want to do something else. So let's include like the case mappers first. Okay, so the thing is that there's various approaches on how database tables can be named. And some databases, like they're case sensitive, others are case insensitive. And that always creates problems. So in general, I would recommend to always use underscores or like snake case for your database names. And Objection has like a pretty nice extension, or configuration, snake case mappers. that you can include inside of your configuration. So that means, say you have, I don't know, in JavaScript, you try to insert a field with this, like this, first name. And what this mapper is going to do, it's going to convert it to first underscore name. And that's like a best practice. So for databases, you always want to have this underscore, but I don't want to, I don't want to write this all the time. So I don't want to write first name colon first name. No, this is just super annoying. So that's why these mappers are like so handy, because you can just import this next snake case mapper. And then all you got to do is you just got to destructure it over here. Yeah, so this is like a setting that I would always recommend. So make sure that your database's columns, the database, also the name and everything uses like snake case. So everything was with underscore. You can also see it here. I used it in the database as well. Okay, so that's it pretty much. We already have our migration specified, and the only other thing I want to specify is the seeds. So a seed is the initial data or a directory where we store files that create initial data. And this is nice for local development, because as your project grows, you don't want to manually insert like that stuff all the time. Or maybe you mess around with the database and then you need to create and drop it again, and then you just want to take some example data and push it inside of the database. And this is what this seeds setting here is for. And that's also why we created this folder here, because this is where our seed data is going to go into. Okay, so but before we do the seed data, let's talk about how to actually migrate, or how to actually create the database schema that we want. So in order to get or to create our database schema, we need to create our first migration. So there's some people who just directly execute create table statements like on the database, but I would really not recommend this, because your database schema is going to evolve all the time, and you need like a tool to properly manage this. Okay, so we have this tool with Next.js. And you can find it if you search for migrations, and then here in the sidebar you will find it. You can just click over here, and here you can see that you basically only need where is it? Yeah, this one here, next migrate make, and then you give it a name. Okay, so let's just do that. So I'm in the root of the project. I'm just going to say npx, because we don't have next installed, next, and then migrate make, and I'm just going to call it init. Okay, cool. So here it is, and you also see that since we are at the root of the project, it just like created it inside of this migrations directory. So we don't want this, so I'm just going to take this file and grab it over here, and then I'm going to delete this folder. Cool, so now we have our initial migration, and what we now need is we need to create our database. And the way this works is we have two methods, up and down. Up is to apply the changes, and down is to roll back all the changes. And what I'm just going to do is I'm going to say next.schema.create table. And the first table I want to create is the channel table. And basically you give it a name. So here's channel. And then you can give it a function over here. And now you can specify the columns. So I'm going to say table.increments. And what this does is it's going to add an ID column as an integer, and it's going to make it auto increment. Now, maybe you actually want to use UUIDs, but like for this tutorial, and it's just much easier to see if it's integers. So that's why I'm just going to pick integers. On production, or in general, you probably want to have UUID, simply because you can generate the UUID before you insert it inside of the database. This is important if you have like a microservice-based system with like some event bus Kafka or something like that. Okay, and so I'm just going to add a name here, and I'm going to add timestamps. So this is going to add a created at and updated at. And basically what this does is it creates this channel table, and after we create this channel table, we create another table, which is the user table. and it goes like this. Yeah. Okay. And inside of our user table, we do the same. We just say table.increments to get like ID as an integer, with auto increment. And I'm going to like put a couple of properties here. So for example, I'm going to give it a name. And I'm going to say it must not be null. I'm going to give it a, I'm going to give it a email maybe. Okay, I'm going to give it an email, and I'm also going to make this not nullable, and I'm also going to make this unique. Okay, and the next thing is I'm going to add the timestamps. True for created at and updated at. And now this is going to be interesting. We're going to add our first foreign key, and we're just going to say, okay, there's like an integer, and I'm going to call this channel ID. And this ID is going to reference the ID column in the table channel, right? So basically this means in the user table we have a column, and this column points to a channel, or maybe not, because it's nullable, right? Because remember, you can either have exactly one channel or you can have 0 channels. So that's why we just leave it as nullable. Okay, so I think that should do it. And what else do we need? I think the only thing we need is we need the video table, right? So same thing, video, and I'm going to say table. I'm going to add a function here. And yeah, let's see. Let's do it like this. And I'm going to say here, we can copy this. I want to copy this. Table increments, I want to have that. I want to have the timestamps. Okay. And what else? I want to have maybe a title. I think title and not nullable, because every video needs to every video needs to have a title after all. And I'm going to add the next foreign key. So I'm going to say, okay, this is the channel ID. And the channel ID is also not nullable, because every video must belong to one channel. And it references the ID column in table channel. Yeah. So that's it, I would say. Yeah. Okay, so now we have our 3 tables. And yeah, we added a couple of properties, but they don't matter so much. What's probably more interesting is like how you do these foreign key relationships. Yeah. And now if we need to roll this back, what do we do? Well, it's pretty easy. We can actually just say return next.schema drop table if exists, table if exists, video. And actually, you know what? I think I'm just going to copy this. So do this. I'm going to do it like this and then like this. And I don't want to have this semicolon here, obviously. And the next thing I'm going to delete is the user, and then I'm going to delete the channel. Okay, so that's it. Why is this yelling here? Yeah. I think that should be it. Cool. So I think it looks okay. We can actually try this out right now. So yeah, maybe let's make another script. Okay, let's make a migrate script. Migrate, because I don't want to type this out all the time. And what we can do is we can just go over here, and I think it's here it's next migrate latest. So this command is going to like run all migrations. And as you can see, like we got this timestamp in the file, so it knows basically which migrations to do. Okay, and yeah, let's just do this, and let's go back, and I'm just going to say npm next migrate latest. So the same thing as we had before, and the only thing that we need to specify is we need to specify this knexfile, right? Because our knexfile is in db and then in knexfile. Oh, it actually isn't. Why is it not there? That explains a lot. I forgot to move it. Sorry, I thought I already moved it. So you want to have this knexfile inside of your database. Oh, yeah, like this. Yeah, I didn't see it because of folder structure. Okay, so the knexfile is now inside of the database. That is fine. Yeah, I think that's okay. Let's try to run this. Yeah, let's see what happens. So we are in here and we're just going to say npm run migrate. Oops. And you can see, oh, there's already an error, and it says, oh, it failed, it's not a function. Okay, let's go to the migration over here. Let's see what's wrong here. Ah, I found it. Sorry, here is like, this is missing. Okay, so let's clear this and let's try again. Let's see. Oops, and we get another error. I say table.email, so we got, oh, string. Yeah, like this. Sometimes I make typos when I talk too much. Okay, so hopefully this is the last one. You know, because it's hard to talk and write the code. Okay, what else is there? There's like table integer dot references. I think it's references. Like this. Yeah, that should be okay. Yeah, that migration stuff can be annoying, you know, it can take a while until like your migration actually runs. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so now we got our migration, and that means, technically speaking, we should have a couple of tables over here. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to say refresh. Yeah, and I can already see we have tables. And the interesting thing is, if you look at the migrations, you can see, okay, it stores what migrations have been run. So you can see here, yeah, there's like a first migration, it was like with this name, and then it was like when it was run. Okay, and you can see as well down here that we actually have the 3 tables that we just created. So like this. Yeah, so you can see ID, name, email, channel ID, created at, and updated at. Yeah, so here if I scroll, then you see the updated at as well. It's just because my view is zoomed in. Okay, cool. So that means our stuff is working. Nice. And then the only thing I would say we still need is we need to create some seed data, right? Because at the moment it's a little bit empty in our little database. So let's create like a seed. And the interesting thing is that this seed or the Next.js, they also have here this seed file section. There you can see it's pretty simple. So it's pretty consistent in naming. You just say next seed make, you give like the name, and then it's going to create like a seed file. And by the way, I think let's go to our knexfile. Yeah, we already did it over here, right? Maybe the same thing as before. Let's make another make seed. This is also for your reference, by the way, because in case you're not sure, okay, how again do we do this? You can just take that, copy it over here, add a comma, and then yeah, I don't know what kind of name do I give. I'm just going to give it def, because on develop, like, you probably want to have some initial data when you run it. And again, the other thing we need to specify is the knexfile. So yeah, knexfile, and I'm going to say database knexfile.js, and that is because we assume that we run this script at the root of the project. right? It's just a little bit more user friendly. So let's try this. Let's say npm run make seed. Yeah. Okay, there we have it. And you can see, bam, we got like a new seed table. And this is good. So yeah, I'm just going to add like a couple of things in here. I think I'm probably going to make this a little bit faster. I don't know, because otherwise it's boring. The only other thing that we need to do, or what I want to show you here, is before we do anything, we need to truncate all existing tables, because otherwise we try to insert it twice. And the way you can do that, or the way you have to do this in Postgres, is you need to run a raw statement. And the reason for this is because there are foreign keys in the in our table. So you can't just say truncate this table, because otherwise, like, the database is going to tell you, hey, but you know what, there are foreign key constraints here, so I can't just remove this. Yeah, so that's why you want to use this cascade feature over here, and that's why you need this raw. But that's more like Postgres specific. I think it could be different in other databases. Okay, so this basically says, yeah, just delete everything. And yeah, the next thing we can do is, let's add a few channels. Let's do it from scratch here. Okay, I will say next channel, and then I'm going to say insert, and I'm going to insert an array, and in here you can specify the objects you want to insert. So I'm going to say ID1, name is channel 1. Okay, save this, copy this, add a comma here. Okay, so now we have two channels. Let's also add this maybe over here. This over here, so it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, so that should be it. And yeah, what else we need? We need some user data, I think. So these are our channels. Now that we have our channels, we can add our users. Does this look right here? I'm not quite sure. This is close the array. This closes this. Yeah, it should be okay. Let's see. Maybe later we see that there's an error. Okay, and then for user, I'm just going to do the same. So I'm going to add maybe 3 users. Oh, and the ID should be 2 here, right? So 3 users, this guy, and this guy, and I'm going to call user 1, user 2, user 3, and I think email, we still need to put email, so user1@test.com. Take this thing, copy it. So I'm just going to insert like a few records over here. And like, oh no, it was user 3, right? Okay, and let's say the first 2 have a channel. So I'm going to say channel ID 1. I'm going to add a comma here. And this is going to be channel ID 2. And let's say the second guy, like, he does not have a channel. Okay, so I think that makes sense. Cool. And then I'm just wondering all the time why this thing is not auto formatting it. I think there's some issue, like, but we will see it. And yeah, the only other thing we need is now we can return, because it's the last thing we're going to do. So we're going to insert like some videos. And yeah, it's first one, title, video 1 by user 1, channel ID 1. Okay, so I'm just going to make this like super dummy data, so it's easy to see what we have. Okay, so let's say the first guy uploaded 2 videos and the second guy uploaded 1 video. And this is user 2 and this is video 2. Oh, there's an O missing here. Yeah, I think that should be it. Yeah. Okay, let's try this out. I think there is there's some kind of problem here, but because it's not doing the auto format, but we will see it soon. Okay, and I'm going to make another script just also to document all of this. And the way you can do that, you can run like these seed files. You just say next seed run. So pretty simple. Let's go over here and I just say npx next seed run. And again, I have to specify the next file, and I'm just going to copy paste this. Okay, so let's see, and I'm going to run npm run seed. Yeah. Yeah, I need to make this async. Like this. Now the auto format is wrong. That's why it had problems. Okay. Just didn't see it. Okay. Try to run this. Yeah. Yes. Nice. So it ran. Let's go to our database and let's see how we are doing over here. So I want to see all rows. And I don't know, can you guys actually see this? Yeah, but here you can see, okay, we got 2 channels and we also got a couple of videos. Anyway, I mean, you can see we now have like the data running. This is good. And yeah, that's it pretty much for this thing. Yeah, maybe one more thing what we could do is we could add another script. And I'm just going to say npx next migrate down. And the reason I'm doing that is sometimes if you mess something up with your database, you just want to undo the current migration. And that's why this command here is so useful, because you can say down, which says undo the last migration, which effectively executes this, which drops all your tables, at least for this migration. Okay. So that means you can easily clear like your database. Yeah, so now we got this ready. We got the migration, we got the seed data. The only thing we need to do is we need to create our model classes. And in case you're wondering how that works, you can check out the section here of a model. So basically the idea is you create a class, and this class is going to like contains like a couple of properties, and then you can directly interact with this class. And you don't need to go like so low level. That's the advantage that this thing provides. Okay, so let's go over here, and I want to create a new directory, and I'm going to call it models. And inside of this directory, I'm going to create 3 new files for our 3 models. So that is the channel. Then we have user, and then we also have video. Whoops. No, not like this. What is it doing? Over here, video.js. Yeah, and the idea here is that you go in here and you import like this model class from objection. And then you create a class, and then you extend from this model. And then you give it like the table name. And there's a couple of other things you can do, so I'm going to show that in a second, but I'm just going to copy paste like all of this, and here it's going to be the user. Why is it not? Because I don't have an export. Okay, so I need to add this as well. Exports equals user. Okay, so let's create this, copy paste this. Channel, and for video I'm going to paste this. So as you can see, this like that database stuff, it's not so easy. Like you need to set up quite a lot of things. And yeah, so now you got this up and running, and the only thing you now need to get like your models up to speed is to actually wire up your next instance with your database. And that is why, or that is pretty simple actually. We just need another file here, and I'm just going to call this database setup.js. And the idea here is that you basically say, okay, I have this nex, and I import like my next instance, and I also have a next file. Next file, and I also need this model, because the thing is, how should this library know like how to access the database? And this is basically what we need to set up here. So that's why I'm just going to make a real quick function. And this is also in the documentation over here, right? So I think it's in getting started or in the minimal example. Yeah, so here you can see, okay, give next instance to objection. This is basically what we need to do. Cool. So here, and I'm just going to say const database equals next, and I'm going to pass the configuration for knexfile.development, and I'm going to say model.next database. So this means that like you globally install like this database inside of all models, and now Objection.js knows how to actually access your database. Yeah, let's maybe say const setup db equals require setup. It's db setup. Right, like this, and then I should also name it like this, right? And then I can say database setup. I'm just going to create an express server, even though this video is already quite long, but you know. So if you make it until this point, like nice one, you really want to figure out like how it works, right? Okay, so here's like express.json, and then app.listen, port 8080, and then console log server running on port. I'm just going to create it in here, okay? Simply because otherwise it takes too long. But I'm going to add a comment in prod, put this in separate files. So you know that you need like a controller and a service, right? I've already shown this a couple of times. But the thing is, it just takes too long, like, you know. So I'm just going to do it like this. And I'm going to expect this, and I'm going to say id equals request.params. Yeah, actually we can destructure it. Const id. And by the way, this is like we're not doing any request body validation or anything inside of this. So yeah, this is maybe also something we should take into account later on. Okay, and basically the way we can finally access our database is we can just load this model. So I'm going to load the user model, and I'm going to do like users. No, it's user, right? User. Yeah. And then you can just say user equals await user.query, and then dot find by id. Yeah, and then you can say I'm just going to return this user, and this needs to be async. Okay, and in case there's like some sort of error, like what do we do then? I don't know. I'm just going to add a try catch. JSON dot status 500 JSON error. Okay, so I'm just going to like put the error message in the response, and that's it. Let's run this. So I think it was npm run dev, right? Okay, there is models and then user. Because it's this one, right? Should be. Let's remove this. Yeah, so now it's starting, and technically speaking, it should work now. So if you now go to localhost 8080, to user and to 2, yeah. So as you can see, we now get the user back. Now you do know, right, that we actually need to build a service layer and add error handling and request body validation and these kind of things, but I'm not going to do this. This is just for the tutorial. In prod, put this in to avoid code smells. right? This is a code smell, but it just takes too long otherwise. Cool. So the last thing I want to show you is how to actually load the user with the channel object. And the thing is, right, you remember we have these two tables, user and channel, and we have like a join column, which was like this channel ID in the user object. And you can actually specify a method in here, like in this model class, that allows you to eagerly fetch other objects. So that means not only do you fetch the content of this table, but you can also fetch the content of like another table together with it. This is what I want to show you. So what you need to do is you need to go, where is it? Here. And here you can see, okay, there's something called relation mappings, like a method. And this is what we are going to need. So I'm just going to copy this. And this is like what we will need. And the way this works is, and you can just copy like from the documentation, you can just copy this. So we're not doing paths here, we're doing like channels. And the idea here is that we say, okay, every user has 0 or 1 channel. So it's not has many relation, but it is many to many. I think it has 1 relation. Right, it's somewhere here in this doc. Yeah, this one has 1 relation. So that makes sense, right? And let's go back to our code and let's just add this here. And the relation class is going to be channel. And now you might be wondering, why are we importing, or why do we have like a require statements inside of like a method? And the reason is we want to avoid circular import paths. Because then we have a problem, right? Then the system doesn't know what to do. And the only or like one of the ways on how you can do this, you just put it inside of the method and then it's evaluated in a lazy way. And yeah, so it has 1 relation. And now let's think, okay, it was person, no, it was user, and it was channel ID, right? Remember we had this column channel ID, and then we want to join on channel.id. Yeah, that's it. And I think then the only thing we need to do is we need to go to our method, and I already have it here because there was some error. But basically the idea is there's a method, it's called withGraphFetched. And then you can say, okay, in addition to this user, I want to load this property as well. And this is called eager loading. You should not always do this, by the way, because it's expensive, right? You always need an additional join. But you can see here that you can not only like load the table itself, but also like this channel property here, right? So here you see like the channel information. Yeah, so this is pretty nice, and this is something that Objection.js allows you to do. So I can only recommend this library. I would probably prefer it over using knex.js, because knex.js is just like bare metal. So this one is just better, like it builds on knex.js. Next.js is solid, it has migrations, it has seed data, that is all cool. But this one like is really nice because it allows you to have these model classes, and you just have to specify the relations, and then you can just load things. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I think I'm going to move that stuff into like a service and data access object layer, but I'm not going to show this because I think this would be boring. So thank you so much, and leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any question, just write me a comment, or just send me a tweet. My Twitter handle is @productioncoder. And yeah, I hope you liked the video, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.